just woke up and had a great day? That's me today. Had a great day, except for I keep swiveling. Hi, today we are going to talk about the wrist. Very complicated joint. I'll put a picture here as always, but the wrist actually has 8 bones in it. 8 little bones here, which means there's actually technically a lot of joint crevices going on in here, which means that it's very, very common to get arthritis and repetitive motion pain in the wrist, because a lot of crevices mean there could be a lot of swelling or just some swelling, and the swelling builds and there's pain and it's a whole thing. So yeah, let's talk about it. So the wrist isn't your basic ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint, ball, socket, moves around. Shoulders and hips are your typical, very standard ball and socket joint. The wrist, or the radiocarpal joint, is actually a condyloid synovial joint. I did it. Okay, what that means is there's just a lot of bones in there, but it's also very mobile. Let's do this. You can do this, 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 this. There's a lot of movements there. Flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, and circumduction. There's other words for this in the wrist specifically, but I'm not going to go into it. So you have a very mobile joint, but it also needs to be very stable, and because you're using it a lot, and it has to be able to load bear sometimes. We still put weight on our wrists, and it's actually very, very good for your wrist to put weight on them. It helps build bone, calcium, all that good stuff. So today, rather than talking about specific injuries like carpal tunnel, like arthritis, I just want to talk about some exercises that you can do to help increase your range of motion and increase the strength in your wrist specifically. They should help if you have repetitive joint movement injuries like carpal tunnel. Some arthritis can fall in that category. But if it hurts, obviously don't do it. Before we get started, I want to add a disclaimer. If you have wrist pain, just at rest, wrist pain or wrist swelling, use RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation. Give it a couple days doing the RICE method. And if the pain stops, then move on to these exercises. If the pain continues, please go see a doctor and get the okay from your doctor first. I have covered a couple of wrist-specific injuries, such as carpal tunnel and de Quervain veins. So if you think that you might have something more specific, or you've looked them up, or you're just curious, feel free to go to those videos. We're just going to work on wrist exercises for strengthening and range of motion. The other thing to note is that if you do have arthritis or some other injury in your wrist, getting it hot may help. So if you notice that you're like washing dishes in warm water and your arthritis or your wrist starts to feel better, cool, use heat, but you also need to increase the range of motion so your joints don't get stiff. Doing these exercises can help prevent repetitive stress injuries such as carpal tunnel. Maybe, huge disclaimer there, you can still get carpal tunnel just naturally. Some arthritises, stuff like that, it can help you, tendinitis for sure, it'll help you prevent getting those issues in the wrist. So these are good exercises to have in your tool belt. And obviously if they hurt, don't do them. So the first exercise we're gonna do, I'm calling it a warm-up, but you do you. If you don't find this to be a warm-up, that's fine. You can just wiggle your fingers, it'll help warm up the wrist, and I'll get to this exercise in a bit. But the first one we're gonna do is called a range of motion exercise. And you can place your hand on, or your forearm on a table like I have, or on your leg, or you can just hold it, whatever. All you're gonna do with your forearm flat, make a fist, and then bring your wrist down and up. down, and up. You'll do this 10 times, move slowly and to the fullest extent of your range of motion. Once you've done that 10 times, you'll go side to side. So this helps you keep the forearm stable so you can isolate the movement through the wrist. That's really all you're doing. That's it. That's your warm-up. Your warm-up, this range of motion exercise, will help get synovial fluid into your joints. If you don't know what synovial fluid is, I keep wanting to call it bone lube.
Okay, why yours and mine?
Amazing sensation for me.
Wonders for me.
They combine.
Reaction?
I mean, technically, think of it like motor oil for your joints, right? Synovial fluid, when there's movement involved, your body pushes synovial fluid into your joint to help protect it. And that's a really good thing to have in your joints anyway, to help them stop getting stiff and maybe rubbing up against each other in certain circumstances. So this is good to do before you do anything else. You don't need to see my face. The next one, with your thumb raised, I'm gonna just do this so that you can see better. Grab your wrist with your other hand, or more like your hand with your hand. And what you're gonna do is gently pull the hand away from the forearm. So you're kind of creating space here. This will also help get some synovial fluid going. So you're just gonna pull. You really have to release the hand or else the tendons are gonna hold the joint together. So if it helps, make it floppy first. But you're just gonna pull the hand away. You can feel it release. Hold for 10 seconds. And then gently release. It's gonna come back. It's not like you're gonna dislocate your wrist. Again, if this hurts, don't do it. So if that feels okay and you want to take it a little bit farther, again, relax the hand that's being pulled. Pull on the hand, stabilize the pulled hand, and then rotate the forearm. The hand will move because they're connected through tendons, but it's really just trying to get that space to kind of move around. It feels really, really cool. A lot of looseness in the wrist after that. You'll do this pull for about 10 to 15 seconds per, and then try to do 3 times per hand, per wrist. The next one that we're gonna do is a prayer stretch. We did this for carpal tunnel too. It's just a really nice wrist stretch. So you can bring your hands to prayer and then gently draw your palms down. I like to try to keep my palms together for this one and just hold at your bottom range of motion. So I really can't go any farther without my palms coming apart. So this is where I'll stay. And you'll hold this for about 20, 30 seconds and then release, come back up. And go back down, hold for 20, 30 seconds, come back up. Do it about 3 to 5 times and just kind of feel it. But that'll help release the forearms as well, so that's really nice. Especially if you've been typing a lot. The next one is a ball squeeze, and this will help your grip strength. It'll also help your forearm strength. I'm using a tennis ball, and I don't know why I'm talking to you like this. Tennis balls are very hard to squeeze. For me anyway, I guess I just strengthen my forearms. They're really hard to squeeze. So they make balls specifically for stress balls. Get a stress ball. Putty is also really nice. They make specific exercise putty. Just like it sounds, all you're gonna do is squeeze the ball. You can see the forearm flex, hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, and then release. Squeeze 3 to 5 seconds, and then release. You can do that 5 to 10 times. Helps grip strength and helps forearm strength. This is my dog's tennis ball. She's gonna be so mad. The last one that we're gonna do involves a weight. You don't have to have a weight. It's nice to add a little bit of resistance. So you do you. You can also just grab a can of soup. It doesn't have to be a weight. What you're gonna do, place your forearm on your table. Hold your weight and then let your wrist kind of go limp, right? So then you're gonna very slowly lift the weight to the top of your range of motion, just like we did before in the warm-up, and then let it fall back down. Slow up, slow down. So you're not just letting it fall, right? Because gravity can do that for you. That's not using any muscles. That's just kind of stretching these a little bit, maybe. So you're gently and with strength lifting, and then you're resisting gravity as you lower. So this is actually going to be a lot on the wrist. This is actually a little bit heavy for me, I would argue, but it's all I have. It's the lightest weight I have. So you're going to do a set about 10 times, and you're going to try to do it 2 to 3 times, 2 to 3 sets per hand. And that can be a lot. That's kind of like your peak wrist exercise, because it's hard. Now you just have a cool down. And this is that piano playing that I promised, right? So you'll literally do this for a while to help release any tension that you've built up here. And then you'll do this and release any tension that you've built up there, like you're playing the piano. You can also shake them out, whatever. And then obviously the very basic wrist stretch, palm is up, grab your fingies, pull them back towards you. Very simple wrist stretches for post wrist exercise. So if you find that you have sensitive wrists in yoga, you'll find this a lot if you're doing down dog and you're like, oh, I'm on my wrist so much. These might help. If you type a lot, these will help. Any kind of repetitive motion. As I said before, if they hurt, don't do them. And if you do find that they start to swell or something afterwards, don't repeat the exercises. Rest, ice, compression, elevation, and maybe heat once the swelling goes down. I hope this helps. I know that a lot of people have wanted me to cover fingers and palms, specifically for arthritis kind of stuff and like finger stretches. I do want to do that. I'll probably do it the next couple weeks. I just didn't want to touch on it when I was touching on wrist stuff. They're linked, but they're not the same, and it's a lot of information. So I'll cover it in the next couple weeks. I'll see you guys later. Bye.